Masechet Nazir Daf Mem Het. They were talking about taking haircuts. Tiglachat Tahora Kesad. In what way does a Nazir shave if the Nazir is pure? Right, he makes it all the way to the end, and this is his final concluding ceremony. When precisely does, and we're going to talk about where and what he does with the hair. Okay, so we're starting off. When precisely does he cut his hair? Hayam abi shalosh behemot. חטאת עולה ושלמים, ושוחט את השלמים, ומגלח עליהם דברי רבי יהודה. So he brings his three animals, Hatat, Ola, and Shilamim, and he does shechita to the Shilamim offering, and it's at that point that he cuts his hair. So it'll be after the Shilamim. So in the order here, it looks like Shilamim is the last one, and so he shaves at the end. There are others who interpret it that the Shilamim would be first, but I think it's a clearer reading if you say Chatat Ola Shilamim, according to the Yehuda. That's when he shaves after, that's when he takes a haircut after all three and shaves. Rabbi Elazar Omer, Lo haya megalech ela al ha-chatat, she'chatat kodemet bechol makom v'imgelech al achat misheloshtan yasa. Rabbi Elazar, however, disagrees and says the chatat is first and he should shave after the chatat. And so I think it's easiest to. So he says this line because the chatat is first. Based on that line, maybe Rabbi Yehuda is disagreeing with the order and saying Shalamim is first. And according to that interpretation, they all agree that he should shave after the first sacrifice. It's just a question: is Shalamim first or is chatat first? But here, Rabbi Yehuda himself said chatat, ola, and Shalamim. Sounds like that's the order. They agree on the order. And so Rabbi Yehuda says after the last one, the Shilamim, and Rabbi Elazar says after the first one, which is the Hatat. However, that's all lechatechila. V'imgileach al achad mishloshtan yasa b'di'avad. If he shaved after any one of the three, that is fine. He fulfilled his obligation. Now, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Rabban Ashbag is going to talk about actually a slightly different topic. Hevi shalosh be'emot v'lo piresh. Generally, when you designate the animals, you say, this is going to be for my chatat, this is going to be for my shelamim, and so on. But if you brought the three animals but did not designate which is going to be which, well, then it doesn't matter, because each one is a different type. That which is going to be for a chatat is going to be the female sheep, and that's 1 year, that's in its first year. We would say when we say 1 year old, it means they passed their first year. That means they're on to two. But in the Talmudic way of counting years, year one is the first year from 0 to 1. Okay, so that's a female sheep, and so that one's going to be obviously a hatat. The one for an olah, you bring a male sheep in its first year, so then you know what that's going to be. And for a shalamim, bring a ram. That means a male sheep that is over 1 year in its second year. And so even if you don't designate them, it's clear which one is which. Okay, now we have a braita that's going to give us more details about the shaving process. Tenor banan v'gilach nazir petach ohel moed v'gomer v'shlamim hakatu medabesh ne'emar ushchato petach ohel moed. So this is going to support the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda that the shaving is done right after the shilamim offering, because the pasuk says, let's look at it inside together. Here, it talks about here the offerings, and then v'gilach hanazir petach oel moed et rosh nizro v'lakach et rosh nizro v'natan ala esh asher tachat zebach hashelamim. All right, we're going to analyze all the parts of this pasuk, so let's see it carefully. The Nazir is going to shave at the entrance of Ohel Moed. Now we're going to see a number of different interpretations of what this means. Nobody thinks it means literally at the entrance of Ohel Moed, because that would be kind of a desecration. There's not a barber shop there. Okay, so we'll see what else this means. His head, and he's going to take that se'ar, that hair that he cuts, and he's going to put it on the fire under the sacrifice of the shalamim. The shalamim is boiled in a pot, and so there's fire under the pot, and you take the hair. It's a bit unusual, and we take the hair and we put it and burn it in the fire under the pot of the shalamim. It's going to get even more even more unusual. We take some of the gravy from the pot that's boiling and put it on the hair. and then put the whole thing underneath, as we'll see in a few minutes. Okay, so now, so what does this pasuk mean? Petach ohel moed. If ohel moed is not literal, then what does it mean? Oh, well, ohel moed is also mentioned in another place, in the beginning of Vayikra, when it's talking about all the different types of korbanot one brings. It talks about the shelamim, and it says ushchato petach ohel moed. So we're making a gezerah shava. It says ohel moed regarding shelamim, and it says ohel moed over here that the Nazir cuts his hair at the entrance of Ohel Shelamim. So at the entrance of Ohel Shelamim is a way of saying together with the Shelamim offering. Okay. And now, as is the typical midrashic style, it gives a hypothesis, and then it presents the opposite to say, well, maybe you can argue the opposite way. So you say that Ohel Moed means with the Shelamim, based on the gezerah shava. Maybe not. Maybe it means literally he takes a haircut in front of Ohel Moed. That would be, in front of the in front of the kodesh, like we had in this picture, right? He'll go right in front over here, and they'll take a haircut right there, right? Set up a barber chair and take a haircut, right? Does that make sense? And we say no. The Braita continues and says here. Amarta imken derech bizayon hu. No, that would be degrading to the mikdash. So it can't mean that. Rather, it must mean with the shelamim. Okay, that is Tanakama. The Braita continues with Rabbi Yoshia Omer eno sarich hare amra Torah lo taleh b'ma'alot al mizbechi kal vachomer lederech bizayon. Rabbi Yoshaya basically agrees with Tanakama. He's just saying you didn't even have to get into this hava amina to say possibly that ohel moed could mean literally that you take a haircut, because we know from a different law that you have steps next to the mizbeach. It has to be a ramp. Why? Because it would be degrading for the kohen when you're walking up steps. You have to take wider strides, and that's degrading to take such wide strides. Take small steps, keep it together, and then his robe doesn't open up so much. So that's more modest for the kohen when he's walking up the mizbeach. So if we know from that's very little degradation. I mean, in palaces and fancy places all over, you have steps, right? That's not a big deal. Even that, no, we say have a ramp, because even that small amount of degradation of taking a large step is prohibited. So all the more so taking a haircut, which really is a degradation, right? You wouldn't go take a haircut not even in your own living room, not to say any kind of fancy place. And so Rabbi Yoshia is like, no, there's no possibility that anybody ever would have thought that you take a haircut in front of Ohel Moed. So basically he's agreeing, yes, Ohel Moed means something figurative. And so, as we saw before, it means that it's together with the shelamim. Now we have something very unusual. In the printed Talmud, it says, Nusach acher b'midrash b'parashat Naso taf 242. Right? Look in the printed edition. It says this. It's in brackets, but before the brackets were there, it just said that. And it says there's another version of that midrash, and it gives a page number of that midrash. Now, this is in fact found in Midrash Rabbah. But the page number is to a printed edition, not our usual printed edition. But clearly, this is a insertion that does not belong here and is not original to the Talmud, because the Talmud obviously was composed way before printing. And in fact, if we look at the manuscripts, we can see that this is only in the printed edition. And is only in the Vilna edition. In fact, is not found in the Venezia. That's the second line. Is the first printed edition. Is not found in any of the other two manuscripts that we have. So this Nusach Acher, someone put it in the margin. Some student or whatever put it in the margin of some printed edition, because this is actually added in later than printing. And somehow a later printer stuck it right into the text of the Talmud, but we put it in brackets because obviously it does not belong in the Talmud. All right, well, we'll read it anyway because it is interesting to compare different versions of a midrash. It's basically the same as one we just said, except that the whole thing is said by Rabbi Yoshia. So Vigilach Nazir. Rabbi Yoshia Omer b'shlamim hakatuv medaber. Rabbi Yoshia says he should shave, the Nazir should shave with the shalamim. So is that true? Or eno ela, maybe it means literally at the ohel moed. It abbreviates the rest of it. Im ken amra Torah lo ta'aleh kav hachomer דבר שלא יגלח פתח המועד אלא בשלמים הכתוב מדבר. No, if so, that would be degrading. And if we learn from the fact that you can't have steps, because that's taking that, then you'd be the Kohen would be taking too wide. His steps would be too wide, and that would be degrading. If that's still into small denigration, and the Torah prohibits that, for sure, taking a haircut would not be allowed. Therefore, we see the Ohel Moed is not literal that he cuts his hair there. Rather, it's talking about with the shalamim. Okay, this is basically the same issue, except that it's all in the name of Rabbi Yoshia. Now, Rabbi Yitzchak Omer, Eno Sarich, Harehu Omer, Velakach et Se'ar Rosh Nizro, Venatan al Ha'esh. ומי שאינו מחוסר אלא לקיחה ונתינה, יעשה זה שהוא מחוסר לקיחה הבאה ונתינה. Rabbi Yitzchak says, I don't need your roundabout derivation that the Nazir cuts his hair immediately after the shalamim. He has to do it right there, right back to back with the shalamim. I don't need your roundabout derivation that, well, it can't be all literally because that's denigration. I can learn it from the pasuk itself, since it says that he's going to take his hair and put it on the fire. So you see that he's doing just two actions, taking the hair, putting it on the fire. That means he has to be there immediately where the fire is. So, one can only do that if he's missing only taking and putting. Take the hair, put it under the fire. And that excludes someone who has to take it, bring it, and place it under the fire. And therefore, if we took it literally, Ohel Moed means he's going to take a haircut at Ohel Moed, and then he's going to burn it. Where does usually burn the shalamim? There was a chamber special for Nazirim, one of the chambers in Ezrat HaNashim. And so he could burn it there. That's where they would usually burn it. You actually could. It's a shalamim. So you could burn it anywhere in Jerusalem. So therefore, if you would do the haircut at the entrance up on the stairs there, and then you'd have to take it, and you'd have to bring it. You'd have to add another step to take it to the place where you are burning the shalamim offering, and then you're adding another step, and the pasuk just says velakach, and then immediately venatan, and so that's how he derives that. Yes, in fact, the cutting of the hair has to be at the immediately after and at the spot of the burning of the shalamim. Okay, that's one version of Rabbi Yitzchak. There's another version of Rabbi Yitzchak that's basically the same. It just splits it into another step. We're talking about with the shalamim, that's when you cut the hair. Does it mean, does Ohel Moed mean with the shalamim, or does it mean literally that we're going to take the haircut up in the entrance? That's why it says take the hair there and put it under the fire immediately. So it has to be in the same place where you're cooking. That's also where you make the haircut. Okay, that's all, and that's the second version of Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabba Chanan Omer Mishum Rabbi Eliezer Vigilach HaNazir Petach Ohel Moed Kol Zeman She'en Petach Ohel Moed Patuach Eno Megaleach. Rabba Chanan learned something completely different from Petach Ohel Moed. It's talking about the window of time. Petach Ohel Moed means at the opening, when Ohel Moed is open for business. That's during the daytime. The Bet HaMikdash as well, and the Mishkan is only open during the daytime. They open it early in the morning, and they close the gates at night. At night, there's no significant activity, just the burning of the leftovers, and so no one's doing anything at night. And so too, the Nazir has to cut his hair during the daytime, and that's what we learn Petach Ohel Moed, when Ohel Moed is open for business. Rabbi Shimon Shezuri Omer, Vigilach HaNazir Petach Ohel Moed, Velo Nazira. Rabbi Shimon is going to learn something else from this pasuk, that only a male Nazir cuts his hair in front of Ohel Moed. That's going to be in public, whereas a Nazira, a female, does not cut her hair in the sanctuary, not in public. Why? Because the young priests will be aroused. They're going to see her hair uncovered, and while it's being cut, and by seeing that, they're going to be aroused. Therefore, for a man we can do it, but for a woman we're going to do it somewhere else in private. Amar lo lidvarecha sota tochiach tichtiv ba העמידה לפני השם, ולא חשינן שמתגלו בה פרחי כהונה. So the sage said to Rabbi Shimon Shizuri, he says, no, that doesn't make sense, because look at the sotah. The sotah says, you place her before Hashem. That means in the Bet HaMikdash, in a public place. And for the sotah, we don't, and we open up and dishevel her hair, also tear her garment, and so that is that's a similar action to a woman. And we don't worry that the young priests are going to become aroused, and therefore we shouldn't have to worry about this regarding Nazir either. And so Nazira should be able to cut her hair, and also in public. Amar lahen, zo kochelet uposeket, zo ena kochelet uposeket. Rabbi Shimon says, no, it's different, because a Nazir puts on eye makeup and blush. Here's the eye makeup kochelet, like kachol is blue. They put on blue eyeshadow. They would get it from this mineral here, and here's a tube and a stick that they would use, an applicator. So this was, very fancy. And so in Nazir, she doesn't have to dress up for the occasion, but the point is she can, and so she may very well look beautiful, and then uncovering her hair, and that's a problem in public. But the sotah is actually disheveled. She doesn't put on makeup, and her hair is uncovered in a disheveled way and torn, and so the young priest will not be aroused by a sotah, and so that's how he defends his opinion. Next Mishnah. Haya notel se'ar rosh nizro u'mshalech tachat hadud. V'im gileach b'medina lo haya mishalech tachat hadud. Now, after they cuts his hair, and he's doing it after the shalamim, let's assume it's right near the place where the shalamim is being cooked. He takes the hair, some of it, and he puts it under the pot where it's being offered. In the fire, under the pot of the shalamim. Okay, now that's only if he does it right there, wherever, in the Bet HaMikdash, in that chamber. But if he shaves his hair outside the Medina, this could mean outside the Bet HaMikdash, outside Jerusalem. That makes sense, outside Jerusalem, because the shalamim, you can cook it anywhere in Jerusalem. So anywhere in Jerusalem, he might be right near the fire, and you put the hair in the fire. But if he happens to cut his hair outside of Jerusalem, then you can't put it under the fire. So then you don't, right? You don't put it under the fire. All this that we've been talking about is a Nazir that makes it all the way to the end, his concluding sacrifices, that's tiglachat tahara. But if he becomes tameh lamet in the middle and has to negate all the days before, and he also brings 3 korbanot, and he also cuts his hair, he does not put his hair under the fire. In fact, the Nazir when he's tameh does not even have a shalamim. He definitely doesn't put it under shalamim. He doesn't put it under any of the sacrifices. This is only for Nazir Tahara. That's Tanakama. We're going to see Tanakama's opinion repeated at the end of the staff. There is another opinion. Rabbi Meir disagrees and says, in 3 out of the 4 cases, one would put the hair under the fire. All except for if he's tameh and he's outside of Jerusalem, then he does not put the hair under the fire. Well, Rabbi Meir will say what he does with it, he buries it. But in all other cases, if he's in Jerusalem, even if he's tameh, he puts it under one of the sacrifices. We'll see which one. And if he's tahor, no matter where he is, he finds a way to bring it and put it under the fire. That's according to the Rabbi Meir. Gemara. Notel se'ar rosh nizro. Back to the same pasuk. Tanu Rabbanan. V'achar kach notel tarotev v'noten al se'ar rosh nizro. So we're going to learn a couple of halachot here. Number 1, you take some of the gravy from the pot of the shalamim, and you put the gravy onto the hair, and then you take that gravy and hair combination, umishalech tachat hadud shel shalamim, and you put it under the fire of the shalamim. Ve'im shilach tachat hadud shel chatat ve'asham yasa. And if, instead of the shalamim, he puts it under the chatat, or under the asham, then he has fulfilled his obligation. Note that the asham is only for the Nazir tameh. Okay, so we ask, Asham ben Nazir tahor mi'ika? What do you mean Asham? He doesn't have what do you mean Asham? Nazir tahor doesn't have an Asham. Amarava kamarvim Nazir tameh meshalech tachat hadud shel Asham yasa. Rava explains that if he's a Nazir tameh doesn't have a shelamim. He has a sham instead. So since he doesn't have a shalamim, he can't possibly put under the shalamim. So Rava explains that this line is talking about Nazir Tameh. And if he puts it under the asham, then he fulfills obligation. In fact, he would have to put it under the asham. Okay. Mena lecha techila. Mena hane mileh. And now, what's the source for all this? In that Braita, Amarava Amar Kera Asher Tachat Zebach Hashelamim Mizibcho Yehe Tachtav. So this thing with the gravy, we learned from this extra word Zebach. She could have just said Tachat Hashelamim. What do you mean Zebach Hashelamim? So Zebach means the sacrifice of the Shelamim. We learned from this that part of the sacrifice of the Shelamim has to be under the rest of the shalamim, has to be on the fire, right? Because as you put it on the fire, which is under the shalamim, so you have to have zevach, something immediately on top of the fire, and then put the hair. So how could you do that? You can't take any of the meat and put it. You can't burn the meat on the fire. You're not allowed. It has to be boiled. But what you can do is take some of the gravy, and that's how we learned that you take some of the gravy, mix it with the water, and that's the zevach, that you're going to put some of the zevach also under the shalamim together with the hair. Okay, from the zevach should be under it. V'im shilach tachat adut shel chatat yasa b'diavad. If you put it under the chatat, then you're fulfilled. That's okay. Since it says zebach hashelamim, that extra word, so we learn, yes, shelamim is the chatechila, but zebach is chatat and asham also are good. Chatam would be b'diavad, asham would be for nazir tameh. Hold on, you can't use this zebach again. It's already spoken for. We already used it to teach that you mix the gravy. And so we answer, no, if it was just to teach gravy, it would have said that more explicitly from the gravy of the shelamim. From the word zevach, we learned that it comes to include, you could put the fire under the chatat and asham. Okay. Obviously, you can't put it on the olah. The olah doesn't boil, right? The olah all goes on the altar. Okay. Hold on. Maybe the word zevach is teaching us that is only teaching us that you can burn the hair under the chatat and asham, and there's nothing to do with the gravy. How could you learn two things from this? And we answer, no, if it was teaching just the types of sacrifices, it would have said shelamim, and also zebach, you could also put it under the chatat and asham. But from the fact that it says zebach before shelamim, zebach of the shelamim, we learn it's a part of the shelamim, means the gravy, which comes from the shelamim. And so from the order and choice of words, we can actually learn two things from one phrase. And lastly, Tenor Banan. הכל היו משלחים תחת הדוד, מחוץ מטמא שגילח במדינה מפני ששערו נקבע דברי רבי מאיר. We already saw Rabbi Meir in the Mishnah, and here repeats it and adds another detail, that all people would put their hair, all Nazirim would put their hair under the pot and burn it in that fire, except for a tameh, a Nazir who became tameh in the middle, and who also was outside of Jerusalem, because in that case he just buries it. But in all other cases, if he's tahor, no matter where he is, and if he's tameh, meaning he concluded his tum'ah rituals, and he's in Jerusalem, he puts it under the fire. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, this is a new opinion that we didn't see in the Mishnah yet. Tehorim kan vekan hayu meshadachin, temein kan vekan lo hayu meshadachin. He makes an even split down the middle, 2 and 2. If you're tahor, no matter where you are, you put it under the fire. And if it's Nazir tameh, no matter where he is, he does not put it under the fire. And finally, Chachamim omrim makol lo hayu meshadachin tachat hadud, chutz min hatahor shebamikdash ubnei shana asa kem misvato. He says in 3 out of 4 cases, you do not put it under the fire. So everybody would not put the hair under the fire, except for one case, if he's tahor and in the mikdash, because that is the proper mitzvah. You're supposed to do it right there in the either in the Mikdash courtyard or somewhere in Jerusalem. That's where you're burning the shalamim, and immediately while you're standing there, you take a haircut and puts it under. That's the proper way to do it. If you do it in any other way, either he's tameh or he's outside Jerusalem, then he does not burn it at all. And this was the Tanakama that was in the Mishnah. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen ve'amen.